you have a question to ask of this board, or if you need clarification or anything, we have a seat over here with a microphone that Mr. Only from the Cable Committee set up so that, you know, all could hear, and the recording would be very, very clear. So if you have anybody wishing to ask anything, please raise your hand, come forward, and state your name and address, and whatever you need to know. Melissa?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Melissa St.Laurent. I live at 366 School Lane in Dayton. I have a few different things I want to discuss, so I don't know if you want me to stop after each one. The first one is I just want to clarify some facts that were mentioned in last week's meeting and to see if you both stand by what you said or if you wanted to make a public apology to the quite a few residents that were upset. That is my first one, if you stand by what you said.
I don't know what might have upset.
Yeah, I don't know what we might have said that got everybody upset.
Okay. Well, I'll go on to the next one.
What do you, be specific?
The mocking of the fire chief, where you said that he ran around like he looked like a fool presenting a whole bunch of different documents, and I can get into that a little bit further too. The state 911 issues, the AMR issues.
Well, those are two different issues, correct?
Right, there were a few.
Well,
But I know it was a big uproar that night listening to the meeting.
Well, most of the content, and this is not excuses, reasons, or whatever. There were two meetings prior to our meeting. One was candidates night. The other one was the finance committee night that was open to anybody, the public, open session. Anything, well, Mr. Pires was unable because he was sick to make it. He did have questions of what went on. Whatever was said was very apparent. It's on tape. It was broadcast at the candidates night or the finance committee meeting of the questions he was asking that we were chit-chatting about while we were in recess. I would never intentionally degrade anybody, mock anybody. I think there was a little misinterpretation if that's the way it came across. But other than that, I don't see reason for that accusation even to be made. Because whatever was discussed or answered to Mr. Pires was what was already been televised.
Okay. Then I just wanted to...
I have no regret for what I said.
Okay.
I don't think we were out of line. You know, it was a private conversation between us. It had nothing to do with town business.
Well, it kind of referred to like the ambulances,
Well, that was another
budgets.
discussion, and we're prepared to answer that, too.
Well, then I'll just go into a few facts,
Okay.
so that way I can tell you. The Deputy Director, Tom Ash, of the Massachusetts State 911 Board states there's no minimum state-mandated staffing requirements for dispatchers. Jeff Began from AMR has stated it will cost Dayton approximately $700,000 to $1 million to dedicate one ambulance to the town. They currently have between 30 to 40 ambulances in the area and only 200 in the entire state.
That's from AMR.
That's from Jeff Began at AMR.
Good.
Therefore, the approximate $200,000 the fire chief is requesting is the most feasible and beneficial to the town. I'm also concerned there is a personal conflict with the fire department. I've witnessed the chief being asked to provide multiple stats, figures, and documents, but when he presents them, he's seeing as trying to confuse the finance committee. Are any other departments required to supply as much documentation?
If they're asked to, yes. Yes.
But are they currently?
And it's usually the two biggest budgeted departments, police and fire.
So the police have had to provide the
this-
calls?
Pardon?
Has the police had to provide the calls and the
Yes,
second
they do
calls?
on every, yes.
Okay.
Every basis, at appointment time, before appointments, yes.
Okay. And then I would also like to add that there's not been any studies done to prove regionalizing dispatchers will improve public safety. That's from Russ Perry himself yesterday. In fact, fire departments in Hingham have been writing letters stating it is compromising the safety of their residents. The feasibility study that was just released says it will now save Dayton $100,000 by adding 4 additional dispatchers to 4 of his current staffing. The math does not add up, but even if I believe those numbers, how much will unemployment costs be for our current dispatchers? How much will it cost us to man the police station on nights and weekends, or will it remain unmanned?
I think you should listen to the presentation on the 1st of April.
These questions, according to Ross Perry, need to be answered by the Board of Selectmen. They don't have these answers. That's separate from what they're studying, they said.
You mentioned things like $100,000 in savings and so forth. You need to hear the presentation on the 1st of April.
Well, that was according to him yesterday.
Please give us until the 1st of April to
Okay.
have the Skyline Group, who prepared the study, give us their overview.
I will
We all
do.
need to hear the facts.
We do.
Okay?
Since this, and this only came out less than 10 days ago?
Correct, and I had
That
got to
final
speak
one.
with Ross on Monday about the figure and the $100,000 savings, and that's where he had told me what it does not include.
As part of the cost for that feasibility study, which was $60,000, not paid for by this town, but it was a grant that Serpent had obtained. So it's not that, we blew $60,000 to try to put people out of work. That's not the case. And we've had telephone calls relevant to that. But it goes with the territory.
Well, the one
The
question will be,
questions that, as part of that $60,000, once that final draft was presented and done, part of that $60,000 cost was to put on a public forum
correct.
and have a meeting with all the parties involved, which were Rehoboth Police, Fire, their dispatch, union representatives, which has not come to fruition yet.
Correct.
And again, I don't have a full plate, I have a platter, a turkey platter right now. I haven't had a chance to go through it all. There's nobody as interested in me of nitpicking all the figures, and I'm good at it, and they know this. That's the reason why whether it's been reporters, yourself, asking me, where I stood on this, I can't give a fair answer until I have all the facts. Irregardless of which way I might lean, I owe it to the town, I owe it to the people involved to get everything straight. And until I'm satisfied, I won't commit. So I'm looking forward to this April 1st just as much as, I hope you people are, because I have a lot of questions. So,
Then my next one question is, if you choose to move forward with this, will the communications department that we voted on still be built, and the taxpayers be paying for that?
I wouldn't see a big investment into it if it was to go that way. I mean, the building, the dimensions aren't going to change. The square footages are not going to change. But when we get to that point, we'll have to make that decision. Obviously, if nothing's going to be housed there, you're not going to invest $100,000, $200,000 worth of equipment. And the state 911 is not going to give you the money to buy it.
Right, but will you want to still have it 6,000 square feet for just the chief and his secretary?
Well, that's after we learn what, all the facts too, I mean, I can't tell you, I put the cart before the horse yet, This is a priority for me right now, to get all the facts, and I'm sure it is, my board members, to get all the facts, and
These should be included in
Pros
all
and
of it, in
cons.
my opinion. It should be a whole
they'll-
picture, not just what the,
they'll fall
Study.
in place very quickly, once we get all the answers. And we should have the answers April 1st.
I will be here. Thank you all very much.
I wanted to discuss the ambulance issue. I know Mr. Maderas is with us, and I think there's a misconception after what everybody heard last week, we were talking about privatizing the whole ambulance service. We have a group of outstanding paramedics, EMTs, first responders. You're right, we did look at this years ago. And there is no benefit in us to privatize the ambulance service with Ambulance 1. However, there is a problem with Ambulance 2, and none of us are happy with that. There were 83 calls, and this came from the fire chief because I asked him for it. There were 83 calls for ambulance 2 from January 1st, 2014 to March 20, 2015. 57 of those runs were made by Dayton, 26 were made by mutual aid. That's a 68% response. That's the way the system is set up. When you heard us talking last week, we were exploring possibilities, AMR. I'm glad you did your homework for us, because I hadn't gotten to that point yet. 68% to me is not acceptable, and through no fault of our first responders, because it's either staffing or the schedule, whatever it may be. Will 3 people help? Possibly. Possibly not. But we have a responsibility and a duty to explore various ways we can do better than 68% and still save the town some money. So that's where we were coming from. And if there's anything else out there that we're going to privatize the service, or we're looking to, save money and not care about people's lives, that's the furthest thing from any of our minds. We want it to work, we want to get our percentages up, and we want the best bang for the buck for our town residents.
Percentages are 100%, Mr. Pius. Did any one of them 26 people not get treated? Did any one of them 26 people not get treated?
I didn't get that
Did
info.
anyone answer the question?
I didn't get that information. They probably all got
You said
treated.
they were treated by AMR.
No, I didn't.
Or
Mutual aid. Mutual aid.
Is that what a mutual aid agreement is? Do we go to Taunton and provide mutual aid? Do we go to Somerset and provide mutual aid?
Sure.
Do we go to Berkeley and provide mutual aid? Because why? Because their ambulances aren't available. That is why mutual aid agreements are in effect.
Exactly,
What
and I
you guys-
agree with that.
What you guys did last week was a disgrace to this town. This will be the 3rd time in 15 years I've heard privatization of the ambulance. Disgrace. You guys, what you did was a disgrace. Regardless of, it was a private conversation, it was still on live TV. Okay? Disgrace. All right? You said what you said, and you own up to it.
I am owning up to it. I don't have a problem. 68%.
People want to go out of office.
Let me finish.
I know, you're going on.
Let me
the road.
finish.
You should step out right now and leave, and not even finish.
Maybe you should leave. Let me finish. 68% is because our people don't respond.
In a fire truck and waited for a mutual aid ambulance.
Well, that's fine, I'm glad. But the point is,
Did not get
are you
treated.
saying that we can use mutual aid?
Did we not? We use it all the time.
Well, fine, then we don't need 3 people, we can use mutual aid, right?
But why do we have a?
Is that what you're saying?
Let's.
Are you saying we can use mutual aid?
Everything by the town and hire these people.
Well, I think you're off track.
And I think you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, that's
As you said-
fine.
Both of you said you're gonna get the ambulance for free. Ain't gonna happen.
Oh, that's not going to happen, right.
Ain't gonna happen.
Well, this
It's the third
from,
time in 15 years.
But this was all,
It was all a private conversation that.
It doesn't matter, it was out there. I don't regret what I said.
You should, because it was a disgrace.
Well, thank you.
do you really
So you're
believe?
gonna now privatize the ambulance, you're gonna regionalize dispatch.
No, we're going to use mutual aid and not give the fire department any help. Because you just said mutual aid is okay. So we can go with mutual aid, correct?
Privatize town hall.
Tom, try to get
You know, with all due respect,
Okay, wait.
mutual aid is for when our men are busy,
That's right.
okay? As a previous EMT in another community.
I understand that.
altogether, And I'm from Dayton. Our men are exemplary. I have worked in all over California. Our men are exemplary. When they need to be there, they
There's no
are.
doubt.
Mutual aid is a backup. It is not something we're going to use instead of our own men.
That's right.
These people, their hearts and soul are in this town, and that needs to be respected. I am disgusted by what I've seen and heard, and you should be ashamed. If you're going to make statements like that, you should have all the information. And I'm sorry, this...
I wasn't the one that said mutual aid is okay.
You heard these words around. I sat here quietly and listened.
I would rather have our guys respond within a matter of minutes in mutual aid in
And it should
15.
be a non-issue.
Then hire
Our
them.
guys should come first. This is our town, this is our families, our lives, our community, and it should come first, no matter what. Mutual aid is a backup for any system. If another town needs us, we're there. If we need some extra help, they're there. But our men are first, our people are first. That all the numbers and all this mumbo jumbo and the drama is irrelevant. The bottom line needs to be looked at, and that is our people first and the safety of our community. Common sense.
I didn't think we said anything else, but
Well,
you guys want to respond?
I want you to know one thing with A2. This numbers from Vegan, the numbers from Vegan are for A2. They would not come in here at all, even for A1, A2. It's not worth it. They will not make an agreement. That is directly today from Mr. Beacon. What I need you to understand also is mutual aid comes both ways. Right now, if A1 receives a call to go over to Taunton, our town is once again left vulnerable. It's not just for the people in here. I don't know if you have that figure in your packet yet either, of how many times A1 has to leave for that. Just the other night, there was a call with Berkeley where Berkeley had to come in for mutual aid. I don't know if any of you listened to that. Our gentlemen were out at a call. I think it was 25 minutes later before Berkeley came into the unconscious patient. That's unacceptable to me. 10 minutes is unacceptable to me. If we had A2 staffed, this wouldn't be a problem. The one other thing I need you to understand is it's not just A1, A2. This is our firemen. Figure our 2 firemen going on a truck to a fire. National standards say 4. We're jeopardizing their lives getting in a truck to save us. We can't have that. We need to be up to standards. Tony's offering, the fire chief's offering 3 men instead of the 6 he really should have, because he knows the budgets aren't there for us. So he's trying to come up with different scenarios in different ways. I've worked with him to try to say, how can this work? How can you make our town safer? I had no vested interest in any department, no police, no fire. I don't have any family. I didn't have any friends on any department. So I'm not doing this because I know someone. I'm doing this because I went through that horror. I'm watching other residents right now go through it. Listen to the 911 calls. Talk to your 911 rep. You will see it happens more than you think. 68%, even if it was 90%, is still not enough for me.
That's right. I agree with that.
For $200,000, you're talking the taxpayers' average. I know this is, some are not happy with this number, and it's not exact. Average for the amount of homes we have is 25 cents a day. That's what somebody's life is worth if we say no to this. And that's my fear.
It will be on the town warrant for approval or disapproval by the taxpayers.
But will it be included in the budget, or because I made that petition?
We have it on the warrant already.
As in the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're approving his budget with the 3, and now it'll be up to the residents to decide?
Everything that the fire chief has asked, from the time that he first came to this board this year with his proposals for his budget and his special articles, everything that the fire chief has asked has been placed upon the warrant. The fire chief came in first with a special article for 2 EMTs, firefighters, EMTs, and a new vehicle. We had a special meeting with him concerning that. Our concern is that whatever we do be effective. Now, I want to say, this board respects the state of the law. The manning, training, and operations of the fire department are the responsibility of the fire chief. We don't involve ourselves in the operations of the fire department. But he came in with a budget proposal. We reviewed it as we do all the budget proposals. And we asked for a special meeting concerning his first set of proposals on the grounds of effectiveness. Because this board is not deaf to the need for A2 to roll when it is toned out, or paged as it is nowadays. The fire chief, based upon the overview of the town's finances that was given at a department head meeting, voluntarily withdrew his article for a new vehicle. And presented to the board instead a proposal for increased manning for the ambulances. The town accountant, that was presented, it was intended that these things would go in as special articles. The town accountant stated that it was her preference that we no longer use special articles to increase the manning in the fire department, but that increases in manning be placed in the budget, where they belong eventually. What we have always traditionally done was police and fire department manning increases began as a special article so that the voters could see exactly how many people we were adding, and then they were amortized into succeeding years' budgets as part of the routine. Which she would rather see those figures in the budget. So after the chief had made a splendid PowerPoint presentation to this board concerning his proposal for 3 men, one of whom will come from the ambulance fund, and 2 of whom will come from raise and appropriate from the tax revenues. The town accountant was going to school for a week at Amherst to upgrade her credentials. I asked him to please take his proposals to the town accountant before she left for Amherst and have her put them into the budget lines. She said she would not revise the entire town budget at this point, but she printed out 2 separate new budgets, one for the fire department and one for the ambulance, for the finance committee to use, and I gave those figures to Ed Swartz, the chairman of the finance committee, exactly as the chief presented them. Whatever the chief has asked for, we have discussed with him, but we have not impeded the process. Your special articles will appear on the warrant. They did not have any money figures attached to them, and they're somewhat problematic in that if the town should take an action one way on the fire chief's budget under public safety, when your articles come up, there is a chance that we will undo one way or another what was already done in the budget. And it may well be that the finance committee chairman, foreseeing that, will move that they be tabled, your articles, if the budget has already been acted upon and it's a done deal. So your articles may come to naught, but they are on the warrant. One proposing 3 new police personnel and 3 new fire personnel and fire ambulance, and one proposing 2 new police officers. They're both on the warrant. I had placed upon the warrant an article to see if to hear a statement by the Board of Selectmen concerning the readiness of the fire department. Simply based upon what we have learned. Everything that we learn about the fire department is provided to us by the fire chief, but simply based upon what we had learned during our budget talks. And that was to have preceded the original articles, separate articles that he proposed. I said to the fire chief, he was concerned about that article. He felt that it had a defamatory appearance. I said to the fire chief, quite the contrary. It may well be that the Board of Selectmen would like to express its support for the readiness of the fire department, but we don't want it to be ruled out of order by the moderator, and therefore we placed this article on the warrant so that we may give a clear picture of what we see as the readiness of the fire department. However, the chief nudged me in the ribs multiple times, and I told him, I said, Chief, if you'll go this far and just find out for me what the prospects are of using something like AMR, a private ambulance, for backup when A2 does not roll, I said, then just look into it for me. I said, I'll take that article off the warrant. He did. He looked into it for me. He called me and he gave me his conclusions, which, you know, I don't keep the public's business from the public, but they were conclusions that were based upon the question being phrased a certain way. I'm not sure that it was quite everything that I was looking for, but nevertheless, he did what I asked. And I reciprocated by removing from the warrant for the annual town meeting a statement by the Board of Selectmen concerning the readiness of the fire department. The readiness of the fire department is the responsibility, and we respect it, of the fire chief. We have confidence in the fire chief. And what we know of what needs to be fixed is what he presents to us. Chief Roderick needs to succeed. Public safety depends upon the success of Chief Roderick and his department. And although this board may ask questions and we may look at things, and some of what we look at and the discussions that we have may become public prematurely, the people of Dayton need to be absolutely confident, and can be, that this board has no predetermination to undermine the fire chief or to demoralize the fire department. That would be contrary to the very oath that we took to serve the people of the town. We have splendid responders in that department, and they are led by a well-trained, sober-minded, and dedicated chief. We all agree.
Well, the one thing I will just say, though, on that note, is the readiness of the fire department. It's the same problem in the police department. You only have 2 men. If one guy's out in Taunton because he's responding for mutual aid, a domestic violence situation comes up where husband and wife fighting, weapons involved, your one guy now responds by himself. It's both readiness of both departments. It's not just one, and that's why I want to make sure that everyone understands. It's not just A1, it's not just A2. It's the firemen, it's the ambulance, and it's the police. It's all as one unit. And I just see we're focusing so much on A1, A2, A1, A2. What about that fire truck, and what about that police cars that nobody else is responding for?
Once again, what the chiefs have presented, what the chief of police presented, is on the warrant, just as he presented it. We have not impeded or reduced or cut what they have presented for the taxpayers, and at the point at which we let the budget go to the Finance Committee without changing it as part of, it's our warrant. We could force a chief to go out and get 10 signatures if we strenuously objected to something he proposed. But once, at the point we have let that warrant go out of our hands to the Finance Committee with the figures on it that the chiefs have presented, whether or not that money is appropriated or spent, or whether or not it is wise to pursue the direction that the chiefs recommend, is out of our hands. It is a decision for the taxpayers, the voters who come to the annual town meeting. Listening to their Finance Committee, listening to their chief. At that point, the selectmen are just like any other taxpayers. We sit, we listen to the chief, we listen to the Finance Committee, and we have to make individual decisions whether we will vote yay or nay.
And like I said, I understand there are budgets. I just wish there were budget cuts, non-safety, and that you're allowing it to go to the public. Right there, that's all I can ask,
That's all.
is that the public get to make that
That's the
decision.
way it has to be done.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Very nice.
Your civic involvement is very constructive and respectful, and we appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you entertain another
Yes, Tom.
question.
Yeah.
I apologize to everybody in the room for my outburst. Very passionate about what I do. Just so you know, when they propose 3, they say 1 coming out of the ambulance fund. It's at no cost to the taxpayer. That's insurance money generated by the fire department.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Yes.
Like to come up there?
Yes.
Hi, Karen Potter, 1277 Smith Street. I have two questions. One has to do with the 911 regionalization. Will the public input have any bearing on the final decision, or does that decision come from your panel?
Both. The decision is in the hands of this board under state law, whether or not to regionalize. There's a lot more to it than just a vote of the board. We then have to, if we go that route, we then have to do an intermunicipal agreement, and it has to be approved by not just us, but the City Council of Fall River and whatever other towns and cities may want to join, and so forth. There's a lot more to it than just one vote of this board, but yes, that matter is entrusted by state law to this board and this board alone. Public input? Absolutely. More perhaps, we pay closer attention to public input when the decision is solely ours than we do when it's a town meeting. If it was something that the town meeting voted on, we would probably say, let them decide. But in this case, where we have the sole responsibility for the decision, we will have to listen very carefully to public input and every concern that every citizen can raise.
And where would we put that input? That night of the presentation? Or are there other ways that we can do that?
That night, we are also, we make a note of this, we can take public input via the website. We can take public comments and public input via the website. Why don't we set that up? We'll do that.
Yeah, we can do that.
We also have been attentive to comments that have been posted and so forth as they've come to the attention of the board. We have taken them to heart. I have personally met with two of our full-time dispatchers and the chiefs and other public safety personnel, including union presidents and so forth, to discuss this among other things that have come up recently. And I'm not saying that we have a complete picture, but we have a thoroughgoing awareness of the public's concerns. We are residents of Dayton. It's not like we live on another planet. When the ship hits an iceberg, it affects the captain on the bridge just as well as the passengers in steerage. And we have no intention of steering this ship into an iceberg.
Okay. The other thing is about the town administrator. Is that a done deal? Because that, I'm afraid that what happened with that is what's going to happen with the 911 regionalization. It kind of like gets by us, because I was at the meetings where we discussed those and where we had the presentations, and yet it doesn't seem that there was any place where we were allowed to vote on our feelings about it. If it doesn't get funded in the budget, if we turn that down, does that end it? Or
It's all done.
so the money wouldn't come from some other place?
I'm glad you asked this question. I'm glad you asked this question.
Me too.
Because you'll be the first to have it said what your opportunity is, although there are some folks who are aware. Let me give just a brief rundown. Before the annual town meeting last year, we received, just before the deadline for articles for the warrant, we received a petition of 10 signatures, all either town officials or town employees, propounded by Mr. Swartz, the chairman of the Finance Committee, proposing a town administrator and setting up certain parameters and duties if it passed. The annual town meeting seemed, you were there, at the annual town meeting, the wind seemed to be at the back of the proposal. It seemed that the proposal had a good head of steam and was headed for passage, but opponents managed to steer it onto a sidetrack and send it to a study committee. I can say, as having chaired that study committee, it worked very hard to study the proposal thoroughly. Its advantages and disadvantages for towns our size, the dynamics between a single head and town employees, the experiences that other town administrators have had in towns where it works. We had a number of them in. It was a thorough study. At the end of the study, the panel, which consisted of 6 members, well, it was 5 members and an alternate, we voted to have the alternate participate in all the proceedings. Voted 4-2 to recommend that the town administrator proposal pass. On October 28th, the special town meeting voted to enact not the original petition's proposal, but a bylaw that empowered the selectmen to appoint a town administrator. The difference being, had the original proposal passed, it would have specified the duties of the town administrator. We had been advised by legal counsel that that was beyond the powers of the town meeting. Only the Board of Selectmen can post the administrator to his duties. And therefore, we proposed, the study committee proposed, a 1-sentence bylaw. It appears in the section of the town bylaws that says town contracts, empowering the Board of Selectmen to appoint a town administrator in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 41, Section 23A of the general laws. With this bylaw approved by the Attorney General, we launched the process of naming the town administrator, that is, taking the applications and actually choosing the administrator before the annual town meeting this year to fund the position, because we needed to negotiate the salary so that the budget can be complete. And we are going to finish that process on April 1st. We will have an appointee, a prospective appointee, depending on the pleasure of the annual town meeting. Today, shortly before the deadline for the submission of articles for the annual town meeting, the Board of Selectmen received a petition to place an article on the warrant for the annual town meeting for the repeal of that bylaw. Now that is going to have to be voted on before the budget, so we will place it on the warrant ahead of the budget so that the Finance Committee can adjust fire when it's making the motion for the general government budget if the bylaw is repealed. However, the petition has still not gone through the Board of Registrars process to have the signatures certified, although I think it has. I think we have more than 30 signatures.
Oh, yeah,
I think there's more than 30 signatures in what was given
They've
to
got
us.
signatures.
But it's going to have to go down the hall and go through the Board of Registrars. There have to be 10 valid signatures of registered voters in order for that petition to be placed on the warrant. If the town does not repeal the bylaw, we have given the Finance Committee a budget of $126,000, was it 126,103?
124, 126.
Yeah.
For the salary and expenses of the new position, with a $96,000 salary, I believe. However, that's without negotiating. We will negotiate with the chosen appointee on the 1st of April, and we will announce the choice at our regular meeting.
And if the bylaw is appealed, then it's all off the
If it's
table?
repealed, it's off the table.
If the bylaw is repealed, we will lean upon the Finance Committee to present the reduced figure for general government without an appropriation, and we will have to notify the appointee that the town has chosen not to proceed with the town administrator. It's actually a second bite at the apple. And I will say, it places the proponents at the, it puts them to their proofs. I would hope that the proponents would invoke the recommendation of the study committee again, so that the people hear it again, because there were good reasons for the study committee to recommend what it recommended. And I also hope that there is a robust debate. This alters a form of government that has been in service in this town for 302 years. There's much to be said for it. There are businesses and industries which, when they're looking for a place to locate, and Dayton, God knows, needs commerce. We need it to relieve the tax burden on our people. They look at the form of government and they see, is it an up-to-date, intelligent, modern form of government? That's one thing to be said for this proposal. There are things to be said for it. On the other hand, we have applicants for the position who say, Dayton's doing fine. You have the highest reserves in the county. Your financial position is great. What more could a town ask for? And yet you want a town administrator. Well, there are reasons why, we're blessed with a certain thing now, and down the road, boards of selectmen change and things can change. It is a debate that the town needs to have. And one thing that this petition that was presented to us will do is, it will occasion a debate on whether or not we should go forward with this initiative. It is a very solemn question. It is not something that we can shake our fist at the heavens at and dismiss lightly. We have to think it over.
Very good. And I'd like to publicly thank Melissa, too, for all the research and all the work you did, the footwork, to help us all understand a little bit better. I appreciate that, and I know everybody else does. And also for the police and fire. Thank you so much. You're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?